Virtual Learning with Miss Jones, Week 2. This is one of my favorite lectures because at the beginning of the class, I would ask you to do something absolutely obnoxious, and you would look at me like I was the craziest person you've ever met, as if you don't do that already. So, what I would ask you to do is take off your left shoe and put it on this table. And voila, I've got my shoes. I'm sure you're wondering why in the world I would ask you to do such a thing, but this leads us all into our next category. Now the goal is to see if we can break all these shoes down to different categories to identify each individual shoe. In order to do this, we're going to use paired statements. That means each time we're going to separate the shoes into two categories. So how would you start? Taking a look at all of our shoes, you see we have varieties of shapes, sizes, colors, styles, and all the in-between. One of the easiest ways to start breaking it down is based on if the shoe is closed toe or open toe. So let's start there. As you can see, we've already split our shoes into two different categories. So let's look at the smaller category and see if we can break those up. Because then if we can, I try to give you your shoes back as soon as possible. Plus, have you smelled y'all's feet? Ugh. We'll take a look at our open-toed shoes. And as you can see, we have a large flip-flop and a small flip-flop. We're going to further break these down into two different categories. Lots of things that you can say here, such as maybe the color of the sole, maybe the color of the strap, maybe the fact that there's a strap on the back compared to one that's not. We'll go with that, and whoever gets their flip-flop back, and my daughter gets hers light-up shoe back. I should have said that. Light up. Oh, wow. That's when I most likely throw your shoe right back at you. Hope you can catch. Now let's take a look at these closed-toed shoes. There's one thing I see, and again, we're trying to split them up into two different categories, but there's one thing that I see that sticks out from the rest. Can you figure it out? How about shoelaces versus no shoelaces? That's going to separate this one by itself, and now we're down to these four shoes. Now, these four shoes are closed-toed shoes, and they all have laces. That's the categories we've split them to so far. So now how are we going to split these shoes down again? And take a look, because there are many ways that you could do this. I'll give you a suggestion. Maybe colored laces versus white laces. There you go. There's your white lace. It identifies the shoe, and somebody gets their shoe back. With only 3 shoes left, there's lots of things you can decide. They all have white soles, so that's not going to be an identifying feature here. But they are 3 different brands. This is where some people say, well, how about this brand versus that brand? But I see another identifying feature. 2 of these are blue, while 1 of these is black. So that could be the identifying feature as well. Blue shoes versus mostly black shoes. This one's black, somebody gets their shoe back. Last but not least, we are down to 2 shoes. And this time you can say brand, we haven't used that one yet. There's other many things that you could say, like the insoles. One has a black insole, one has a blue insole. One has gold in it, one has this neon orangey color in it. Lots of things you can do here, but let's just say New Balance versus Adidas. Therefore, we split these shoes, everybody gets their shoes back, and you're like, okay, why did we just do that? That warm-up activity leads us into today's lesson, which is about taxonomy. Taxonomy is a science that's all about naming and categorizing species based on their degree of relatedness. Of course, this changes constantly based on the new discoveries that we see. I mean, we can only visibly see 20% of the ocean, so every single day they are finding new species. Probably not right now due to this virus, but I'm sure that'll resume at a later time. The first person to classify organisms, plants and animals, was a guy named Aristotle. He was a Greek guy. The only problem was he was unable to view these organisms in a microscope, and there are a lot of microscopic organisms. So way later came a guy named Carolus Linnaeus. And he was the one to come up with the binomial nomenclature system, which is a 2-word naming system, aka our scientific names. We're Homo sapiens, right? Some of us are. Others, I don't know what y'all are. The binomial nomenclature system uses the genus and the species. The genus is always capitalized, and the species is always lowercase. So Homo would be capitalized, and sapien would be lowercase. The H would be capital only, that is. In our modern classification system, we have 7 categories called taxa, and they go as follows. Kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. But that's going from the least specific down to the most specific. So kingdom is very broad, and the definition for it is going to consist of all the related phyla that fall underneath it. And a phyla is going to be a group of related classes. then class, group-related orders, and then you keep going down the line until you get to species, which is the absolute most specific thing you can come to. Let's not forget that a species are two organisms that can mate and produce fertile offspring. So, if you're in the same order, you share everything that comes before that. So, kingdom, phylum, class, order, you share the same class, phylum, and kingdom. But as you get more and more specific towards the bottom, you may fall apart with some of these other organisms. Let's look at the common dog, for example. The kingdom is animal kingdom, just like we're in. And then the phylum is chordata. Chordata means that it has a spinal cord. We still fall in the same kingdom and phylum as a dog. Dogs fall in the mammalian class, as do we. But the order comes down to carnivora. That's not us so much. Family, Canidae, genus, Canis, and then species, Familiaris. That's the common dog. There's so many different species of dog out there, as I'm sure you know. But as you can tell, we still share the same kingdom, phylum, and class as a dog, and as we do with a bunch of other species. This is also that part of the lecture I take a little break and say, come up with your own way of memorizing kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. And then you come up with some mnemonic or whatever to figure it out. And then we share, and it's pretty funny. But I'll go ahead and give you two that I use. The first one that I ever heard was keep pots clean or family gets sick. Kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. That's kind of a reasonable one to go along with there. The other one I've heard of is King Philip came over for good soup. Okay, if he says so.
And now, a segment on drawing with Miss Jones.
This is often a diagram that we use to show something going from the broadest to most specific. It's the inverted triangle. So at the top, you see it's a bigger category. So kingdom is huge. And in fact, there are 6 kingdoms that we talk about. 2 of those kingdoms are bacteria by themselves. That goes to show you just how much bacteria there actually are. That's eubacteria and archaebacteria. Then we have plants, animals, protists, and fungi. As we go down this list right here, you see how it gets more and more specific. So down to species, that's the most specific you can possibly get.
This now concludes your session of drawing with Miss Jones.
So how does this all tie back into your shoes? Well, what you actually did was perform a dichotomous key. You made your own. It's a set of paired statements that are used to identify organisms. They're very simple to figure out, as long as you follow the golden rule. Always start with question number 1 every time you reach a new organism. But then you have 2 statements, and it says this organism has a fin, this organism doesn't have a fin. If it does have a fin, it tells you to go to number 2. And if it doesn't have a fin, it tells you to go to number 14. Of course, I'm just making all of this up, but that's really how it works. You follow the statements, whichever one it goes with, it tells you where to go next, and you keep following it until you get a species. Here, let's practice one now. The last thing we're going to talk about today are phylogenetic trees. And those are trees that kind of show the relatedness between species. The closer the branches are to each other, the more closely they are related. If the branches split way far out, they're not very much related. It's really too bad we don't have a 100 facts quiz right now, because those 2 would definitely be on it. And y'all would have a hard time spelling dichotomous key and phylogenetic tree. And often we get them mixed up. But anyways, this concludes virtual week 2 of learning with Miss Jones. I hope you guys have a fantastic week. Until then, I'll see you next time. I'm out.
And now, a segment with Drawing Miss Jones.
Whenever you're ready.
I'm never going to be ready. And now, a segment... I can't do it.